This fender's a lot worse than I thought it was. I had a few of these little patches made up. So I'm working on the fender for my 1969 VW Convertible. In my last video, I mentioned how these are in pretty rough shape and I'm looking for replacements. But until then, I'm going to see if I can attempt to fix this one. In my other videos, I've just kind of done the work and then show you the result. I'm going to try to bring you along for the ride this time and kind of show you my thought process and what I'm doing. Well, let's get started. Okay, first off, I'll show you the condition of the fender here. Most of the bolt holes are rusted out. There's a couple of them that are semi-okay. Like this one here, it's completely gone. And then there's one down here that's completely gone. And then here, it does have where someone had patched it at one time, and that is starting to rust out again around the patch. It looks like they kind of lap welded it and maybe soldered it in there. It's kind of an old school repair, but it needs to be done again. And then there's a few holes up in here. These aren't going to be perfect. Like I said, this is a temporary fix until I can find a decent fender to put on there. So the first thing I did was I had a few of these little patches made up in CAD and then burned them out on a plasma table. The plasma doesn't make perfectly round holes, so I just have to run a step bit through there just to clean it up. But what I'll do is, since some of these are really bad, but the profile is basically the same, is I'll take the profile off of a decent one here and then cut it down and use that one for like this one here. And what I'm going to do for that, so I get my profile really close, is I have a 1/2-inch bolt that fits right in there. It's a nice tight fit. Now these are metric, so that's why the 1/2-inch is a tight fit. And this one here is, I drilled it out to 1/2-inch because I don't have a metric bit, but it's a really nice tight fit. And then I'll just put a bolt on there so it's nice and tight. And then once I've got that on there tight, I'll trace the profile on there and cut it out. I'll probably clamp like 3 or 4 of them together and then cut them out so the profile is exactly the same on all of them. So once I get those cut out, I'll bring you back. So I cleaned up the surface with one of these nylon wheels, because when you're dealing with metal this thin, you want to leave as much there as possible, and this mainly just strips off the paint and the rust scale. Now, I don't plan on trying to do this bend here for the flange. What I'm going to do is just cut the profile. So I'll just trace the profile on the back side here and then cut that out, and then I'll cut a separate piece for the stuff that's rusty here, and then just weld along that corner and then grind it smooth. I figure that's going to be the least amount of work. And then this one here, since the hole is pretty much gone, I've got a washer on the back side of the bolt, so I can sandwich the plate in there and get it close. All right, so once I get this cut out, I'll bring you back. All right, so I've got this piece cut down. It matches this profile here. And what I did was, where it's kind of rusty, I marked a line up here And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut through both layers at the same time so I have an exact profile that matches. And there'll be a slight gap, but just the thickness of the cutoff wheel, so it should work pretty good. All right, so I got that cut out. There's just a little tiny gap there. So I'll weld that up. And before I took the clamp off, I put a little line on there on each side so I can line it up to exactly where it's supposed to go. So I'll weld that up. I'll probably tack it from this side because it's easiest to access, and then weld it from the back side so I don't have to grind down as much, because this is the surface where the two parts mate. So it should be as flat as possible. Okay, now I've got this piece welded in. I ended up having to weld it from this side just because from the seating position, it's hard to get a good weld position for the inside without reaching over the fender. So I ended up doing it this way. I'll just have to grind it smooth. Next up is this here. I drew a line here around where it's rusty, so I will cut that out, and then I'll put this here on the back side and trace where I cut out, and then cut that one out. There is a slight curve. There is a slight curve here, so what I'll do is I'll just kind of put a little bit of a curve in the metal until it matches up. And I'd say that's pretty close. I can get it closer once it's in there because it's not a real sharp curve, so I'll just kind of tack it in and move it up as I go, or move it down as I need to. All right, so I got this cut out and got the contour pretty close. So I've got some magnets holding it in here, and I got a nice tight gap here, so that should weld pretty nice. So I'll weld it up, grind it down, and show you the finish. So here's the finished product. It's not quite the exact contour. I probably could have did a little bit of hammer and dolly work before I welded this seam down, but for what I'm doing, it's pretty good. Now I've just got probably 10 more to do on this fender at least. It's going to be the same process on all those, so I'm probably not going to go into detail on any of those unless I come across something that I end up doing a little bit different. So I'll probably do those, and then I'll probably bring you back for this piece here, because I might have to redo the rolled edge here, and that'll be a different process. So there's a big section here that's rusted out, and I don't really want to freehand it because there's some flex in here, so if I get it off, then the fender won't line up correctly. So what I did was took a template off the good fender, and then I can line up that bolt hole there and weld it in. So this piece here, I kind of had to freehand. This contour didn't match the other side. I tried to match it up and it was way off. So I'm assuming one of these fenders was replaced at one time. And I don't know if it's a factory tolerance or if one of these is aftermarket. What I had to work with was this piece here. The original hole had rusted out and they drilled a different hole here. So I used the bolt trick, 1/2-inch bolt through here, and then just kind of figured out from this contour here how it would kind of look. I have no clue if that's how it's supposed to look, but it's in there and it's solid. So next on the list is this part here. I'm going to just do this section here that's right up against the flange for the fender bolts, and then work my way around. I'll probably do it in maybe 3 or 4 sections, just so I don't have to make a piece with such a large contour in it. And then once I get this piece made up, I'll probably do the rest of this with it bolted up to the car, because it'll be easier to handle it when it's not kind of like moving around all over the place. So I'll get to work on this. I'll show you how I roll the edge here and put this slot in here. So I've got my piece here that I traced, and I drilled a couple pilot holes already, and then I'll take a step bit and drill it through until it matches that radius right there, and then I'll just take a cutoff wheel and cut between the 2 holes. So I know it works because I've done it before when I took a late model Fender and turned it into an early Fender, because the the bumper bracket slots are in a different location and a different size, so I had to move it, and it works pretty good. So here it is, I got it cut out. There's a couple places where the cutoff wheel got a little bit away from me, and there's a couple nicks right on the radius here, but overall, I'd say that's a pretty close match. Now I've got to put this flange on the bottom here. So right here I marked where the radius begins, so it's flat here, and then the radius just begins right at this here. So I'm gonna start by hammering it. I'll just get it started, and then I'll form it around this extension here, because it's got a pretty close radius to the part on the car. So I just got a little crease in there, just something enough to hold it into the socket extension here. And then I'll hammer it around and then move it as I need to until I get the lip completely formed. So the rest of it I'm probably gonna have to do on the bench, because I can't get the vise around it anymore. So now I've got the extension vice grip to the bench, and this is 20 gauge, so I can just kind of form it by hand and then hammer it the rest of the way. All right. Now let's go line it up with the fender and see how it looks. So I got it on there, and it is pretty close. This curve isn't exactly a straight line. There's a little bit of a curve to it, so I'm gonna have to take it back to the vise and kind of hammer more on this side to get the radius the way I need it. So here I'm back at the table with the extension vice grip to the table. So I'm just going to kind of lift this up and hammer on it just on the one end to get the radius in the spot that I need it. You can also see this is a different extension. The radius was slightly bigger than the other one that I had, so I went with this one so it's a little bit closer to what I need. I'm going to say that is pretty close. I'm going to cut it out and find out for sure. I might have to do a little tweaking once it's on there, but I think that's pretty much it. So I've got it all clamped in, and I'm gonna say that's good enough to weld it in. It's a little bit off down here, but I think once I weld it in, I'll probably hammer on it just a touch to get a little closer I mean, this part here is so banged up that it might not even be off. This might be off here, so we'll see what happens. So I've got the fender here laid up against the one fender that's good here, and the radius is a little bit off. So what I plan on doing here is I'm gonna take some pie cuts out of here and then just kind of bend it over to get the radius to match. It's not gonna be a perfect radius, but for this project it'll be close enough. So I put 3 pie cuts in there, and now the radius matches pretty good. It's not a perfect radius, but it's a lot better than it was before. So now I'll patch up that other spot there. I'll probably do that in at least 2 patches, maybe 3. We'll see how the curve of the fender works out best. So I've got that bottom half done there. Didn't turn out too bad, especially considering what I started with. Now I just got to fill in these holes, and the rear fender is done. The only tip I have on these is try to get your piece pre-bent so it matches the contour. It doesn't have to be perfect, but try to get it close, because when you bend the metal, it changes the size of the hole that's needed, because if you have a flat piece, it needs a hole this big, but if you bend it, the hole gets smaller. So then you'll have gaps to fill. So just kind of try to get it as close as possible so you have less of a gap to try to fill, so it's nice and tight. So now I'll work on that, and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Right. So I started welding this patch in, and this fender's a lot worse than I thought it was. I tried to clean around the rust holes as close as I could to some clean metal. So I thought I was good, but as you can see here, there's clean metal here, and there's a hole that came through because I started poking around on the backside, and it's rusty on the backside. It started warping like crazy here because the metal is so thin. So I might have to reevaluate my intentions with this fender here, but I might be able to still fix it, but it's going to take more patches than expected. So I took a couple days off to contemplate my life choices, and I figured since I've got this far, might as well finish it. Now ideally, I would replace this whole part here that's rusted out in one piece, but it's got curves that go this way and curves that go this way. So I would need an English wheel to do that, and I don't have one of those. So I'm just going to do it in sections, replace it. It won't be a perfect curve, but for this car, it'll be close enough. Well, since the metal looks clean on this side, but it's thin on the back side, I'm going to end up going from the back side and doing the cutting just to make sure I get to clean metal, or at least something that'll hold a weld. So now to get cutting. So I got it all welded. Took a few pieces here, but got her done. This one here, probably could have made it out of 2 pieces. It would have been a little bit easier. Had to do a lot of hammer and dolly work on it to get it to line up with the curve here, but I got it. Yeah, I ended up doing 2 pieces here, which is what I should have done here, because the major curve is right here, so I kind of tried to put the seam right on there so I didn't have to do the whole thing. I guess I'll take the grinder to it and show you the finished product. All right, so here's the finished product. I threw a little flat black paint on there, and this is the way I'm gonna run it because it's not worth putting Bondo on it and making it any better. Like I said, it's temporary until I can find a better one, but it actually, the curve came out pretty nice here. Here I got a little bit too much of an arc in there. It should be a little bit more flat, but once I put the bumper on there, it'll be okay. Looks like it'll line up with the bottom of the apron pretty good there. There's a couple of the bolt holes that are a little off, but they're close enough where I think I just make the hole a little bigger. It'll fit. Not bad considering I replaced pretty much every bolt hole on the car and every bolt hole on the fender. It's expected that something's not going to line up. Now, if you've got a fender that's in that same condition, I wouldn't recommend doing this, but if you've got like a couple bolt holes that are bad, or like maybe a small rust hole or just a little bit of damage across the bottom here, you can use all these techniques to fix that and save a fairly decent fender from the scrap. Now I was gonna do the front fender the same way, but started cleaning it up, and well, the headlight bucket I might be able to save, but I'm cleaning it up and I'm not finding anything to weld the patches to because there's rust all the way through. So I'm gonna have to find a replacement for this one. Unless I get 100,000 views on this video before the end of the year, then I'll fix it and you'll see it. So if you like this video, remember to subscribe and check out one of the other videos that I've had. You can see more of the metal work on this car here. Catch you on the next one.